Okay, so firstly a big thank you to all my subscribers and to my members, and thank you to John who has sent me this Zoe. Now this is a 2018 Zoe ZE40 and it has done 6,000 miles from new. This is insane. Everything is so shiny, it's ridiculous. If we look under the bonnet, it looks like it just came out of the factory. Okay, there's a little bit of dust on, but just all the connectors and everything's just so shiny compared to every other Zoe I've looked at. There is a little bit of surface rust here and there on bolts and things you'd expect, but it's just so little, dirt and that kind of stuff on the pipes. Just absolutely insane. So what is wrong with this car? So the car doesn't start, doesn't charge, doesn't drive, doesn't really do a lot. It's got electric motor failure on it. Looking at the diagnostics, the main fault codes are for the electric motor and particularly what it's called phases circuit. So the electric motor phases are the stator around the outside. We can have a look at that. So if we look at a motor, I've got one I prepared earlier. So this is the stator around the outside. The rotor goes in the middle, and these are the stator connections. So what the car is basically saying is that there's an issue with these connections, and it's not seeing the correct amount of resistance, really, basically. That's interesting. Now, the motor is kind of a dumb component, so it sort of does what it's told. So potentially we could have an issue with the motor controller, because if that has an issue, it might be complaining about the motor, or it might be saying the motor's got a fault, but actually the controller's got a fault itself. Interestingly, also on the diagnostics, these are the two stator temperature sensors. Interestingly, one of these it thinks is 140 degrees, which obviously is not quite right, and the other one's a plausible figure. The really interesting thing is the fault code seems to point towards low resistance, and this car's done such a low mileage. I'm wondering whether there's damp somewhere, either within the motor or within sort of this connection area. So basically the plan is, I'm just lifting the car up. Yeah, I'm using bricks, wonderful. I've got some ramps on order, but they've not arrived yet. And yeah, just lifting it up, going to get the under tray off and just check the connections on the motor. So this car was, it was taken to Renault. Renault said they think it needs a motor controller and a motor. So they won't just fit a motor controller, they'll replace that whole box on the side of the motor. So pretty much the whole motor stuck under the bonnet Renault wanted to replace. And they said they weren't actually confident that was going to fix it, and it wasn't worth doing. That's what they told the customer, and charged him best part of 500 quid for diagnostics. Brilliant. So then the guy took it to an independent garage. They were sort of happy to work on EVs, but they said, to be honest, they've never done this job before and they're not that confident. So that wasn't great either. So yeah, he just didn't know what to do with it, and ended up in contact with me, and here it is. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. Not seen anything quite like this before. Whether we're going to need a new motor or motor controller, or whether there is just damp, we will see. So let's get the under tray off and have a look. Right, I'll catch you in a moment. So got the under tray off. First thoughts, it's a little bit oily almost there, and the reduction gear is on this side, so it's oily kind of on the other side, which is interesting. And also, if we go underneath, you'll just have to bear with me a moment, and let's put the light on. There is, where were we? Yeah, just around here. It's kind of oily on here, so potentially a little aircon leak, and then the oil has come out. So that's interesting, although unlikely to be related to the main issue that's wrong with this car. The most interesting thing is under here, everything is just so clean and shiny. I mean, you can see that, it just looks so nice under here. It's like it just came out of the factory. There's so little dust and dirt on everything. This is the front subframe, which usually really suffers from corrosion, but absolutely nothing at all. So yeah, I mean, just look at it. It's like brand new. And look at these. Oh wait, that's just the car going to sleep. these wire covers have got no dirt, dust, anything on them. Fascinating. That really makes me think that potentially the issue with this motor, it could be that it's got damp, and that's just due to really low mileage, that it's got a bit of moisture in it and it's never got warm enough to get rid of that. And that's a potential. So the cover panel is over there that we need to get off so we can start doing some tests. So from there we can test the motor, check the resistances, we can check for moisture in there, and we can potentially start to do some tests through the controller as well, because we kind of need to check the motor, see if that's okay, and check the controller as well, check for moisture in there, and just see if we can see what's going on. All right, catch you in a bit. Okay, so I've got this cover panel off, and I'm going to attempt to show you something. Right, it's going to be a little bit tricky getting the light in the right place, but there is something rather interesting in here. Apologies about the dodgy camera work, but if we can get this to focus, can you see that? Right, I need the light to be about there. Hopefully you can see those cables are damp. Yeah, I think you can see that. So there is moisture on those connections coming out of the motor. There's moisture on that second down one as well. So that does seem to agree with there being moisture inside the motor. Now, whether that's caused any further issues is interesting, but yeah, this car is obviously really low mileage, so potentially a bit of damp inside the motor, and the owner just doesn't do enough miles to warm it up and get rid of it, basically. So interesting. So what are we going to do next? So we really need to have a good look inside that motor, and I'm thinking potentially bore a scope into the motor. We may end up having to take everything out, but if it's just damp, can we dry out that damp? Maybe. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take everything out if not necessary, really. So yeah, interesting times. I hope that's focusing. I'm just going to make that manually focus just so you can definitely see. So I think, yeah, borescope through the air cooling vents. So there's one at the start of the motor, and an exit out the back. And yeah, I reckon we put the borescope into the motor and see if we can see anything, basically. I mean, there could be further issues. If it's been damp for a while, could potentially be rust inside the motor or something like that. Maybe it's just a little bit damp and we can get rid of that damp and get the car working. Interesting. Right, I shall do some further investigating and show you what happens next. All right, cheers. Okay, so we saw some moisture on the wires, the main wires where the car provides power to the motor on this Zoe. I took the cooling fan off and had a look down there. Nothing sort of to note down there. Didn't seem to be any rust. There was no sitting water. So I think this is really just a case of a little bit of moisture. But seeing a little bit of moisture and being confident that that's actually causing an issue are two different things. So what I wanted to do was measure so that we could see a measurable impact, because the car is obviously detecting a fault with this car. We don't know for certain whether the controller has an issue or it's just the motor or both, okay? So we want to rule that motor in or out. So I did a couple of tests with a scrap motor just to get some readings, basically to try and detect whether that moisture was causing a short. So I used my standard multimeter. It couldn't detect anything. You've got a really high resistance between, what I'm testing is between these main stator windings and the case, basically. Okay, so is there enough moisture in there, either around these cables or inside the motor, to cause that to have a join where it shouldn't? Now, interestingly, all these wires are obviously sort of like plasticized because they're right next to each other. Otherwise, they'd connect to each other, wouldn't they? Which would be no good. So, you know, more than likely, it's going to kind of be in this sort of area. But measuring from this wire to the case, so standard multimeter, couldn't detect anything. So I've also got this insulation test meter. So what this does, you set the voltage you want, and it actually generates that voltage on the red probe, and then you put this on like your case, and it tries to detect that voltage. So a standard multimeter on a resistance test is just generating a tiny little bit of voltage to do that test. And if there's moisture, it's not enough to cause a connection in that moisture. So but when the car is running, obviously there's actually high voltage going through those wires. So this meter is more simulating what's actually happening when the car is running. So with this set to 500 volts, we got a reading of 1.13 mega ohms, which is very low. Okay, so on the other motor over there, we got 20 mega ohms. Okay, and this is with the leads disconnected from the controller. So we know that there's no other component in that circuit. We're just literally testing those motor windings, which should be isolated from the case, and they are not. So this is good because we've got a measurable figure, because without that, we could try and dry out this motor and say, oh, I think it's dry now, but the car doesn't still start. But have we dried it out enough? So, you know, and you don't know whether the controller still has an issue or the motor still has an issue and you haven't fixed it. But by having a measurable thing, a measurable aspect, we know that this is bad. If we make this good, if we can get a good reading, then the car will either then work, at which point we obviously know the controller's not affected, or this reading becomes good and the car doesn't work, and we know then it's more likely we've got an issue with the controller as well. So I've done other tests on the motor, which were all fine. This is the first test that's failed. There are further tests I can do on the controller, although they're a bit of a faff. And to be honest, drying out the motor and watching this reading is quite easy, to be honest. So we're going to give that a go and see what happens. We might have to take this car apart. We might have to replace the motor, might have to replace the controller. But if we can just dry it out, obviously that's much better. The car is so low mileage, 6,000 miles, the motor has probably never got warm, and that little bit of moisture might just have accumulated over time. So, yeah, so what I'm going to do is sort of twofold. So I've got a fan heater, and that is pointing at where those connections are, where that moisture was. So that's number one. So I've just set that up, wedged it up there, and I'm going to turn that on in a second. I've sort of put a bit of a barrier there because it's just to stop the kind of the warm air just being blown away, really. I'll probably put some other things around it as well just to get that nice and warm. It's a little bit overcast today, but apparently it's going to be really warm tomorrow. So I'll probably just take my time with this because that's not gonna hurt things, just doing it over tomorrow as well. And then I've taken off the main fan. Well, I sort of took the whole thing off, and then I put this bit back. And this is quite useful. So it's an air-cooled motor, so we can blow warm air through this motor. And there is a device which is designed to blow warm air, and it's this thing. So, yeah, what I'm basically planning to do is get this hairdryer and just get a rag and just bung this up. It's very high-tech, as you can tell. And just blow warm air through, and that will just go through the motor just on a low setting and just exhaust out the back. Just to try and get that moisture out, basically. I don't know for definite whether there's moisture inside the motor and then that's kind of wicked out through those cables, or whether it's just got a bit of damp around those connections. But drying out the whole motor at this point doesn't seem like a bad idea. See if we can get that reading nice and high. I would want that to be... So on the other motor it was 100, which is very high. But yeah, 1 is very poor. I would want that to be more than 10 as a sort of minimum really, just based on experience. So yeah, I'm going to set this up as well, put this on a low setting. I'll put the duct on the back of the motor just so that it's bringing that damp air away from the motor. Yeah, and I'll leave that for a bit and see what happens, basically. I mean, we've not got a lot to lose. I can just set this up and go and do other things, so that's quite cool. And if it is just a bit damp and we can dry it out, then fantastic. There is obviously a risk it's damaged the controller, but hopefully it's just an issue with the motor. It's a little bit damp, the controller's detecting that, and if we get rid of the damp, then all good. And then potentially just advise the customer that, you know, once a month you need to go on a nice long journey and just warm up the motor, just to prevent this from happening again. So, but we will do this and see what happens. So I will, put the hairdryer on, and I'll catch you later. Be all right. Cheers.
Okay, so interesting development. So I've had the hairdryer blowing through the car for a few hours, and I've used this fan heater because it was slightly easier to get an angle, blowing on the connections where the motor connects to the motor controller because they were damp. Okay, so checked them after a while, and I've got my laser thermometer, and they were nice and warm, and I looked at it and they were still damp, and I thought, okay, that's interesting, maybe there's a lot of thermal mass, it's quite cold, so I left it for a bit longer. It's getting nice and warm, and it's still not evaporating. So you can actually see, if we can get in there, there is still, having spent a considerable, well, having left it for a considerable amount of time, you can actually see still, we can get right in there, apologies. So, hopefully it's focusing. It's hard for me to look at the screen. So you should be able to see there. I might have to just back up a little bit. Right, sorry. Just adjusting my hands. You should be able to see there, it's still damp. And on that next one, it's got evidence of damp there as well. So basically, because it's not evaporated, we know that it's not water. So there's some on that next one as well. I'm hoping you can see that. But there's just some drips there, because I was getting a bit, confused, and I wiped some of it off with my finger. But yeah, it doesn't evaporate. So what that means is it's not water. So what is it? Well, it's coolant. And obviously coolant is designed to not turn into steam, to not evaporate. And we're going to have trouble with focusing now because I've done manual focus. So we can kind of prove it here, because what I've done here is I put some drips of water out of my water bottle, and then I put some drips of coolant just from a car that I'm working on. And what we can see here is the water has evaporated because it's been nice and warm in the sun, and the coolant has not evaporated. Because obviously in your car, if it gets hot, I mean, EV is not going to get that hot, but in your sort of fossil engine, it gets really hot. You don't want that coolant turning to steam. Even at 120, 150 degrees, you want it to still be liquid. So if that moisture on those wires was water, if it was condensation, it would have evaporated like this. See, there was just a bit more there, so that's not evaporated because the sun's gone round. So it must be coolant. So we now know that we've got a coolant leak inside this car. Now, I have seen it before. So effectively, it's right at the bottom of this part. There's no obvious sort of coolant loss from the header tank. But I've had it before on a later Zoe, on a 2020 car, where, so this, what's called the PEC here, you can see there's a coolant pipe going in there. So it's got a kind of jacket there, where there was sort of like some pinholes almost, and under certain conditions, some of the coolant would sort of drip through. And it looks like that's what's happening here. So where we thought it was sort of condensation from low mileage, that kind of thing, that appears not to be the case. And it is just sort of the tiniest amount, but it is enough to cause the issue. So yeah, interesting. On the previous one, I had to replace that whole control box, but I did that with a used unit. It is locked to the car, so then you've got to resolve that basically and kind of build a custom one out of the two to retain enough components so the car doesn't think it's changed. Basically, it thinks that the that parts haven't been changed effectively because it's still got the VIN number. It's going to depend on whether we can get exactly the right kind of combination of parts. Some of them are quite specific in here, so in terms of sort of combining parts to get it to work, there can be some sort of restrictions there. But yeah, interesting. We may have to get a new motor controller on it. But yeah, we have learned something which is useful. So yeah, if there was condensation in the motor in terms of water, that has been exhausted. I've had this hairdryer just running on really low. That's going down the cooling pipe. I put a towel on there because basically at the start it was just warming up this pipe, and because it was on really low, and it wasn't actually really making it to the motor. But yeah, we have warmed the motor, and we've pointed a fan heater at that moisture, and it has not evaporated. So we know it is not water. So that is interesting. I think what's going to have to happen is the whole lot is going to have to come out, unfortunately. When it just looked like a little bit of moisture, it looked like it may be the case that we could just dry that moisture out and then it would be okay, but that's not the case. It looks a bit more serious than that, but we've got to do what's necessary to fix the car. That's the way it goes. So yeah, I will have a chat with the customer and then we'll crack on. So all right, I'll catch you later. Cheers. Okay, so we got this car in the workshop. Amusingly, another one just arrived, which is a bit of a Copart special. But yeah, it doesn't actually starts, but doesn't drive. That one out there. It's all sort of happy. High voltage system comes on, and you can start it, sit there all okay, put it in drive, move,
cuts out. So that's interesting. That's the next one in the queue. But yeah, this one, the sort of electric motor failure comes up as soon as you open the door and get in the car. So the car knows that there's an issue with this. And so we inspected the connections between the motor controller and the motor, and there was moisture there. So I thought, okay, yeah. And then we tried to dry that out and it wouldn't dry. So we worked out it's coolant, and that's where we're up to on this car. So what are we going to do now? So we've got to strip it down and basically work out where that coolant's coming from. I sort of have my suspicions because, I mean, effectively, that control box, the PEC that's across, so this one that goes across and down, and where we're inspecting is right at the bottom of here. That is water cooled, so there's, I don't know if you can really see, oh, you can see one pipe there, and then there's another one further over there, and there's a jacket. It's kind of like that bit there, really, going down that side. There's like a water jacket there. And that's obviously leaking. That must be where it's coming from. And then those connections at the bottom of that area. So we need to find out what exactly is going on. Chances are, my feeling at the moment is that this is going to need that box replacing. But in terms of the case, basically. So I've seen it before on a slightly later car. This is a 2018, I believe. Yeah, 2018. I've seen it on a 2020. Where it's just sort of poor casting of that case, and the coolant was just dripping through a tiny bit, and this may well be similar. But we've got to look inside and see what's happened, see what components have been damaged, because we may need to replace components inside that box. So this one's a little bit of an unknown. Normally by the time I get to this point I kind of know exactly what I'm going to do, but it's more of a strip down and assess really in this case. But that's the way it goes sometimes. We've got it up in the air, we've got it in the workshop, and I'm going to start stripping down. So I will catch you in a bit. Cheers. Okay, so strip down is complete. This motor stack is literally ready to come out. There's pretty much not a lot holding it in, so those 3 bolts there and that mounting, and then that's the other engine mounting. There's a mount at the back that's been taken off. Everything's off, drive shafts are off, and we are ready to take this out. This is going to be interesting to see inside. I don't think there's going to be much to see because there's just a tiny amount of moisture at the bottom of that box, which is down here, under there, where the connections are. And I did a ZE50 about 6 months ago, which is my wife's new car actually. And when I opened that cover plate, there was about 50-ish mil of coolant came out. And even on that one, it was hard to tell where that coolant was coming from. And on this, all we've got is a little bit of moisture down there. So that makes it really hard. But having said that, now we can really easily see these cooling plates. So we've got the water pump here, pumps the water into this box and out the top. So this is the bit that's water cooled. So realistically, it's not getting in from the outside, so it must be coming inside through the case and into that box. Then the lowest component is the motor controller, and the lowest part of that is where the wires connect to the motor. So we know that the motor controller has got coolant on it. The coolant can't be dried off. You only have to kind of physically remove it or replace the motor controller if you can't physically remove it all. Because how do you get it off? It's very difficult. Yeah, very difficult. So we shall see shortly what it looks like. But yeah, we're now potentially facing the prospect of having to replace this case, which is quite a job. Basically getting another case and stripping it out. That's what I did on the ZE50. Fortunately on that one I had another sort of box with all the components in it, and it was exactly the same type. So you get like the 5AQ, the motor type, and then you get the variant. So it was an R135, but there's kind of like even under that there's differences, like sub variants kind of thing. And then it's like generations of parts that, you know, they have a variant of a car, but they kind of update it as time goes on, software updates, physical updates, that kind of thing. But fortunately with that R135, it was, the box I had was exactly the same. So I just had to transfer over the components that are coded out of the original one into the new one and then put it on. Whereas for this one, I haven't got a box that's totally ready to go. So it's going to be more a case of using parts that we need. Potentially, I've got some cases available that I've stripped parts out of. I mean, it's not ideal, but what I might have to do is basically transfer parts from in here, other than the motor controller, because that's got coolant on it, and then put a replacement motor controller on it, and then we'll have to do some more tests on the motor, something like that. But yeah, we'll see if there's any telltales in here when we get this out. So I'm going to do that next. I will catch you in a bit. Yeah, all right. Cheers. Okay, so we've got the stack out. We've got the wiring loom off. So there's a big wiring loom that goes all around here, air conditioning compressor, control boxes on the side. So we've got that lifted off and we've got everything out so we can see what's going on. So initial look inside the case, there's no vast amount of coolant, but we kind of weren't really expecting a lot of coolant because it was only a tiny little bit on the wires coming out the end of the motor on the bottom of this. But what we can see is sort of evidence where it's been damp there, so you can see it's kind of stained in there. So there's obviously been some coolant collecting there, and then it's pretty much just dripped as the car's moved down into this sort of cover panel, and the motor wires come through here to connect onto the motor controller. So it's ended up here, which is not a massive surprise because it's the lowest point. I've seen this before. Yeah, this area here, basically the coolant pipes are there, and this part on the side here, just this end is basically where the coolant flows. And I've seen it before where it's basically pour casting and it's just a tiny little bit porous and it just seeps through a little bit and it ends up on the lowest point, which is the motor controller, and the wires that connect onto the motor. So that being said, that motor controller, I mean, we can't dry it because coolant doesn't evaporate, so that needs to be replaced. We've also got the issue of this case is obviously porous, so we've got to swap this case. So we've got to take all these components and put these in a fresh case. Basically, I've got a couple of cases that I've bought because I needed components, so I've slowly sort of removed components as I've needed them. So basically we need to swap all of these components apart from this controller, which we need to replace. The motor itself, we weren't sure whether it would need replacing. Now, this is the connector that sort of like the protective part on the motor wires to hold them in place and stop any sort of dust and grit and stuff getting inside the motor. So this we can see is quite damp. I will mop this up in a second with a bit of dry white towel just to see if we can see the colouring on it, but we kind of know this is coolant. It's got to be coolant. So yeah, interesting, but we can see it's definitely damp. Similar on the top half. It's hard to get it to focus, but yeah, there we go. We can see that's all damp. So we can dry that all up. Crucially, the moisture doesn't seem to be inside the motor, which is really good. So we need to do a few tests on this motor, check that everything's good. Just looking inside the brush box cover, there's a little bit of discoloration on there. We can clean that up. We'll check these brushes. It should be okay because this is a really low mileage car. It's done like 6,000 miles, ridiculously low. So yeah, that motor should be good. Controller needs replacing, and we've got to swap that over. Quite a big job to swap all these over to the replacement box, but that's what we've got to do. If we just swap this controller, it's just going to keep leaking, and then at some point, again in the future, it's just going to break down again. It's not going to be a good repair. So we've got to do what needs doing. So I need to order a controller, and they need programming as well, so that's fun and games. We've got to get that done, but that's the way it goes. And yeah, swap all these parts over. So yeah, fun and games. But I'm glad the motor looks okay because it is really low mileage, so that's good. Yeah, just a lot of labour to swap this over. It's quite a big job, but that's it. That's what we got to do, and that's what we got to do. So yeah, all right, all good fun. So I'm going to do some more checks on the motor. I'm quite tempted to get that controller out just to sort of have a good look inside there. Just to see if there's anything obvious, any moisture behind it or anything like that, just to see if it gives us any more clues. But yeah, basically next plan is to order one of those. Obviously I need to dry and clean this and just have a really good check over the motor. I'll get the reduction gearbox off just so we can check that end of it as well, make sure everything looks okay, just in case there's any sort of corrosion. That end, there is the position sensors at the other end, and it's got a ring in the middle that can kind of get a bit of surface rust on it, which isn't ideal. So we could replace that kind of while we're there, basically so that we're happy that everything is going to be good, basically. So yeah, I'm going to crack on with that, and I'll catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, so got this motor controller out and found where it's leaking. So there was nothing visible sort of above. I've seen it kind of leaking from a little bit further up here. And looking at this case, I mean, the general sort of casting quality, they tend to be bad, but this one is terrible. It's really, really rough. So looking at the back of the motor controller, so it looks, fairly damp. It's slightly difficult because this is a kind of paste, this thermal
sort of thermal grease, and it is slightly damp, but it just looks a little bit too damp down here. And as we go further up, you can see around this hole that it's damp, but it's not grey, so it's not thermal grease. So if I just move the camera that way, there we go. You can see there's drips around there. So we know that there's coolant coming through there. And also, if we look at this one up here, can we see a little bit on there? It's tricky to see. What about this one? Oh, you can see around there that it looks damp as well. And you can almost see a little triangle where it's kind of like dripped down kind of thing. So if we look at the corresponding holes in the case, hopefully I can get this to show on the camera, but yeah, I think you can see, just move the light, you can see the drips there just above that hole, and they're clear because there's nothing showing. Oh yeah, you can kind of see them there. Yeah, so we know that coolant is seeping through the case around that hole, and then if we move up to that one, you can sort of see the, let's get it there. Oh yeah, go this way a bit. Yeah, you can see the drips of coolant around that, just on that right hand side, and it just looks damp around that hole, doesn't it? It shouldn't look like that. I mean, if we compare that to like this one down here, you know, there's no sort of like dodgy reflections, no dampness on that at all, just the bare metal and the thermal grease. And then if we go back up to this one, you can see there's kind of a ring round it. It seems to be drips. You know, it just looks like it's been damped, doesn't it? Yeah, so that's good to see. So we know the source of the coolant. It's kind of what we expected. Similar to what I've seen before. You can really, I hope this is picking up on the camera because I can really see it visually. It's just very difficult to get the light in the right place. But yeah, that centre one, oh yeah, I think you can see those drips above that hole there in the middle one. So yeah, as this case has been made and then it's been machined, it's just a little bit thin where these holes are, and coolant is just seeping through. I mean, this coolant isn't under any kind of pressure, so it's just poor casting really. But yeah, I've seen this before, but yes, we need to swap this over, so definitely need a new controller. Bit of evidence of kind of heat on the back of here as well, but I suspect that's probably where the coolant and thermal grease is mixed. I always think the application of thermal grease is terrible. So this is one sort of transistor board on here, but I mean there's massive gaps, big lump there, nothing here, and here they seem to have put the thermal grease around the outside, but there's basically very little here. I don't know whether it's actually been pushed out of the way by the coolant. I don't think so. I think it's just a big gap, and I've seen sort of similar before where they've sort of blobbed it around the edge and there's kind of nothing in the middle, so it's pretty poor. Inside here there's 3 blocks, sort of these, pretty much where these 3 gaps are, there's 3 blocks of transistors, so that really wants to be in the middle, if anywhere. But yeah, very poor, but that's how it goes. So at least we've got it, we definitely know what's wrong with it. Yeah, so motor looks okay, we'll keep that, replace this controller, transfer it to a new case, and should be all good. Right, I'm going to go and dig out a case and start moving a few bits over. Alright, cheers. Okay, so I've started transferring parts over. So that's the old case, what Renault call the PEC, that wraps around the motor there. And I started transferring them to a spare case that I've got here. It's one I just had to use different parts out of. There wasn't a lot left in it, so there was just this inductor and then a capacitor, an AC capacitor there, and that sort of tray there. So basically I've stripped everything out. So DC-DC converter is over, the buzz bars as well go around there, and the charging rectifier. So that's all, those parts are over there. These, this is a DC capacitor, and the buzz bars, they fit on top of that motor controller. So I've cleaned all this up. This is where the replacement motor controller will go once that arrives. I've got that cover panel to put back on the top. Also had to move over the charging filter, which is that part on the top that the socket from the connector from the Type 2 socket fits onto. So that's swapped over, so that's off there. And then the wires from that come through. This is the comms, and then these sort of tagged wires come down onto the charging rectifier to actually get changed into DC, basically. So it's actually going quite well. I had to sort of clean this up, obviously get all this thermal grease off, and then this rectifier has to be re-greased with correct amount of thermal grease. This DC-DC converter's got a cooling pad, so that has to be replaced as well. So that's all been done. So it's actually
going pretty well actually. Yeah, the last time I did this, I pretty much had a whole box sort of ready to go. And I only swapped over the bits I exactly sort of had to in terms of VIN locking so the car wouldn't recognise that the box had been changed. In this case, it's kind of a full swap over, but that's fine. That's just the way it goes. So that is pretty much how I'm going to leave it. There's just one cover that needs to go on the top. But other than that, the next stage is motor controller in, obviously all thermal grease, and then that capacitor and buzz bars. So that is basically ready to go. Yeah, I haven't yet done my sort of further checks that I want to do on the motor, but I just kind of wanted to get cracking on with this really rather than just leave it, because I wasn't quite sure kind of how well it was going to go, really how easy it's going to be. But yeah, I just wanted to crack on really. Once you start, you kind of want to get going as well, because you've undone different bolts, put them in different places, and you know what each pot is. So I'm quite the way I organise it, I'm quite sort of organised in terms of those bolts go with the motor controller, and those buzz bars, and those are the bolts that go there, that's the bolt that goes in there. You know, I kind of like put each set of bolts in a section. There's bolts up there that hold that capacitor in. So I kind of put, you know, each section in a pot. So I did the kind of DC-DC converter section, I did the rectifier section in different pots, and then just sort of transferred them over, because the bolts vary quite a lot. It's surprising actually. So the one down there is different to the ones up here. So those three have got like a fixed washer on, that one hasn't, slightly different length. Similarly with these bolts, if you look at, just spin that around, which is going to move, but anyway, yeah, you can see that one and that one's the same as that. So these are short ones, and that one at the top is a long one. So if you just kind of like gunned everything off and just threw them all in a pot, it'd be pretty tricky to get them all back in the right place basically, and it is very important to get those back in the right place. You see, you know, there's a bolt here, there's two there, a lot of these are different, so I think these ones are the same, and possibly the same as that, but different to those, but you know, I didn't look whether they're different or not, because I put them back in exactly the same place they came from. So that's quite cool. I'm really pleased with that. DC-DC converter is a little bit tricky because it's got two bolts. So if we go around here, the one there and there actually go through the case and hold it on. So I always put a bit of sealant on there just to sort of stop any sort of moisture ingress from outside basically. So I'm quite pleased how that's gone. I've moved across any sort of bolts. So when I undo something, I, if possible, put the bolts back in where they come from. So I've moved all these bolts from the old case and put them back in the same place, so that when I go to put things back, the correct bolts are going to be in the correct place, because lots of these bolts are all different as well. You're doing a big job, again, throwing them all in a bucket, it's just not really going to do it. It's not a suitable way to do it as far as I'm concerned. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to leave it. It's like 6 p.m. now, and I am pretty tired and ready to go. So I just need to sort of tidy this up and just cover it all up, just to make sure it doesn't get damp at all. And then I'm absolutely going to call it a day, and pretty much waiting for the controller, other than just doing those checks on that motor, just to make sure that we're definitely happy with that, any cleaning up on the slip rings and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we are cracking on. It's going pretty well, and I will catch you later. All right, cheers. Okay, so I'm waiting for the motor controller for the control box there for this car to be delivered. So just kind of basically just making sure everything else is done, so that when that arrives, we can get that in, get everything reassembled and get it back in the car basically. So just having a look over the motor. So this car's done 6,000 miles. Shouldn't be anything major, but we just want to make sure while we're here we look at everything and just sort of resolve any possible concerns basically. So because the car's obviously not done a lot of miles, which is good in some ways, wear will be low, but potential for corrosion, things like that, we don't want to miss something which later obviously becomes an issue. So this is the position sensor, and this ring in here has a habit of getting a bit rusty, so just having a look at that. There's a little bit on there. Hopefully you can see. Oh, if we go up here, sorry, reposition there, so there's quite a bit on there, so I think we should replace that ring. Then we can inspect that sensor. The sensor tends to be okay. See that ring, oddly, on that side, it looks really good. But then this surface is quite rusty, and that sort of positioning is crucial with that ring. So yeah, that really wants to be replaced, so we can do that. and then at the other end is where the brush pack is. So if you've been around my channel for a while, you'll know about these motors. So these don't have any magnets. They have a wound rotor in the middle and a wound stator, and then to get power onto that rotor winding, they have these set of brushes. So just having a look at these, because we can replace these brushes if necessary, but looking at these, yeah, I mean, they're sort of about 90 and 95% still left on those, which is what we'd expect. They look good, a little bit tricky to get off without chipping them, so, but I took my time, got those off. Hopefully that's in focus. But yeah, no, they look all fine, no sort of evidence of overheating or anything like that. Slip rings here, a little bit discoloured, but we can clean those up. And the readings from sort of the windings and from the rotor all looks fine, so that's good. So yeah, these, we just need to get that discoloration off basically, and just clean all this brush material out, just so it's all basically all ready to go. Yeah, the interesting thing in the general sort of casting quality, because obviously the issue with this car is that it's a casting fault, something I've seen before where coolant's leaking inside the control box. If you look at this, this is the reduction gearbox. I mean, the quality of this, there's, you know, so I try and steady the camera, but yeah, I mean, the sort of lines and marks, or I don't know whether you'd call them cracks or sort of stress cracks from where it's been made, it is quite poor, to be honest. Yeah, not good at all. Yeah, I mean, this, you can tell this car's not done a lot of miles, because normally you have corrosion where you've got this little bit here. Normally this is all around here, and this is actually a steel locating peg, so these can rust. But actually there's just a little film of oil, and I suspect that's original, and it's just not done enough heat cycles to basically just get rid of that oil. And it's slightly amusing that the cover for this wire was actually trapped there, so it's actually pinched the cover, not pinched the wire, but we will just sort of move that just so that that doesn't happen again. So that all looks fine, the motor doesn't make any noise. We'll replace that ring in there, and just check that sensor as well, clean that up if necessary, and yeah, clean around here as well, because this is where the seal goes. So behind this you can see this fibre catch washer here, there's a rubber seal there. So yeah, we just need to make sure that that sits nicely over the motor, everything's all nice and clean, because this is actually bathed in oil, and then the seal for the oil is around there. So make sure it's all going to be good. The other thing on this car, when I took it apart, I noticed there was a slight leak on the AC system. It was interesting because the AC system had good pressure, although it may have been a bit low, but just knocking things over. But this valve had oil under it, so you can see this is a bit grubby. If we do that, you can see that there's a bit of oil there, so it's oily underneath. So this component being quite low, what looks like it's happening is there's a slight leak here, and the AC oil is just dripping out. So I was trying to work out where this is coming from. We can see the dirt's collected in the oil. So whereas like these pipes are all nice and clean, there's sort of no dirt on here. On this block here, where this valve is, it's dirty on both sides. So that seems to indicate that it's not like leaking one side, because each side here unbolts and this pipe comes out and there's a seal in here. But if it was just coming out here, we'd just expect to see dirt around here, and same on this side. Whereas we've got it kind of spreading out all over here. When we look on top of this valve, you can sort of see that this back part is darker, so it's just a bit dusty there, but this back part looks slightly oily, and actually you can see if we look at there, that's oily. So it looks like this valve is leaking, and this is absolutely dead easy to replace now. I don't think it's a major issue at the moment, but obviously that will continue to leak, will cause low pressure in the AC system, which could damage the air conditioning compressor, so could cause a major, bigger problem in the future. Obviously be a lot more difficult to change when the car's together, because this is the back of the radiator pack, subframe is under here. It's a really awkward place to get to, but obviously right now, all the pipes are off, we can take everything apart. So I have got a replacement valve, so just exactly the same. This one's a little bit oily just because it had some oil inside, and that's all kind of gone all around the outside, so it needs a little bit of a clean up. But yeah, you can see the valve in there. So yeah, just like a solenoid operated valve, and yeah, a nice a nice new one, newer than that one, manufacturer, same part number. So that's good. So I'm going to swap that and put that on. And we're just kind of literally getting our ducks in a row, basically, so that when the motor controller arrives, we can get that on. That motor controller has to be programmed as well, so we've got to get some equipment to do that. So yeah, fair amount of sort of faffing around to do yet, but yeah, just trying to make sure there's not going to be too many delays once we get that controller. So hope that's interesting. I'm going to crack on getting the motor ready, getting that valve changed, and I'll catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, Zoe fans, it is rebuild day. So the new motor controller has arrived from Renault, so that is cool. So that is ready to fit in. So we've got that to put in this box. So this is a new box with the old parts moved over because obviously it was leaking coolant down here. So this is all cleaned up. So I've got to prep this and get the thermal grease all put on properly. There's a little bit of dust in there from where it's been sat, so I need to hoover that out, make sure everything's nice and clean, get that fitted, get that box reassembled with all the buzz bars and everything, make sure that everything is back all in the right place. And yeah, then put the cover on there. Then this motor, we've got to get this reduction gear back on. The surfaces are quite clean because it's really low mileage, so that's cool. So we can basically pop that on. Then once that control box is ready, then that goes on the side, and then we've got like the aircon compressor and stuff like that, brackets that go on the top. And then that wiring snake, which is on top of the old leaky box, that's all got to go all back around this big stack. It will be by then. And then it goes back in there, and then we rebuild that. So the slightly annoying thing when you replace the motor controller is you've got to program it before the car will work, but you can't program it when it's not back together. So normally I would put it kind of like half back together and then start the car and spin the wheels and stuff like that, and you get a few faults because a few things are disconnected, but you know fundamentally the drivetrain functions. You know, a car which didn't spin its motor before now does, and there's no faults kind of relevant to those components that you're worried about. But in this situation we can't do that because we put a new controller on. It has to be programmed, the car's got to be fully back together physically. I have to get it within an Ethernet cable range of my router to do the programming. So yeah, that makes it a little bit more difficult. It's also interesting because we've retained the original motor. It's really low mileage. I had a good look over it, no major concerns, just cleaned a few bits up, sort of as explained. So there is a risk we've missed something on the motor. You can't test everything until it, you know, tries to use it for real. But, you know, on the other side, I'm kind of not just going to replace components just to make it zero risk, because that's just a ridiculous cost then. So we only really do what needs doing. And yeah, we do the best job we can, and then we see what happens. If we have to take it out and do something else, that's just how it goes. But I've done these quite a few times. You kind of get a feel for what needs doing and what doesn't. But yeah, I'm going to start rebuilding that now. Yeah, and we are literally ready to go. So I'm going to crack on with that. I need to, where did I put my thermal grease? I think it's over there on the shelf. Cool. Right, I'm going to crack on, and I will catch you in a bit. All right, cheers. Okay, so reduction gearbox is on and that's all bolted up, so that's cool, and I've rebuilt this PC. So the motor controller is hiding under here, there's a DC capacitor on top of it, and then all the buzz bars basically go on top of that. Obviously all these cables have to be in the right place, so when you plug something into the front, whether it's a charging socket or whatever, or it's the wire from the motor, you obviously plug in here, these are all routed into the correct place. So yeah, just need to double check all these cables, it's all looking good. On this variant, it has all the plugs populated, which is kind of makes things a little bit easier. There's a slightly later variant than this car, and it doesn't utilise all of the plugs on here, so that makes it a little bit more complicated on those, because it looks wrong, but it's right, if you see what I mean. But this one, yeah, everything plugs in. So yeah, all the cables are looking good. I think what I'm going to do is get a cup of tea actually, and then I'm just going to double check this basically, because if something's not right, we have to take it all out again basically, because something's not going to work. So yeah, it's all looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I've got pictures of these from when I've taken them apart, so I can compare it to that, just make sure all the cable routes, but yeah, just making sure everything's clicked in, everything's routed correctly, and yeah, just making sure it's all good basically. Nothing's going to pop out, because that's really the worst case, isn't it, that something works initially and then it kind of pops out. But I've done this quite a few times, so I know how they go together. So yeah, I'll have a double check in a minute, and then get that cover on, then the whole PEC can go back on there, and then we can finish rebuilding this stack ready for the car. All right, catch you in a bit. Okay, so that stack is back together. So that went on okay, actually. No major issues. I wasn't happy with this gasket. There's a cover panel under here, which you may have seen before. That one. And it's got a gasket on it. And I just wasn't quite happy with this one. It was just slightly bent, actually. So I went to my storage where I keep my parts and got another one. And yeah, I'm a bit like that, really. If I'm not happy with something, then I just stop and resolve it, basically. I don't just kind of plough on. Yeah, so that's all good. So I'm going to get that stack back in, get the engine crane moved over. That is literally the next job, to get that moved back in. So yeah, I was kind of saying earlier that you can't fully test this. You can do a little bit of testing. So before the car instantly knew there was an issue with the motor controller, so we had kind of like warnings, fault codes straight away. You didn't even get to the point of starting the car, so it didn't go to ready mode. So we can obviously check that those errors have gone away, so that's good. But obviously, yeah, in terms of actually making the car do stuff, that's a bit more difficult. So yeah, I have to get it basically moved over within range of the router. I've got a pass-through device which you connect to an Ethernet cable to the router, and then you connect to the diagnostic port of the car, and then basically that enables the programming. So this is a blank part, so it's got no VIN in it, it's got no motor information, so we need to get it programmed before it will do anything, basically. So yeah, we've got to get the car back together, and I will get this stack back in. All right, cheers. Okay, so we've done quite a bit of rebuilding, so this is looking good. So when I was able to, I got the 12-volt battery connected and just checked that there was no errors, basically. We got a battery charging impossible, which is not a massive surprise because we've got no charging socket. But we've got no red danger warning, which is what we had originally. So the car knew there was a fault straight away, so that has gone away. The high voltage system is alive and awake and working, and we've not got any really concerning faults. So at that point, I would normally like start the car, spin the motor, all that kind of stuff, but that's the point. Yeah, I would normally do that, but I can't in this situation. But we've done what we can. We've checked and got no major warnings. We've not left off, something major underneath in that control box, underneath the cover panel, which then the car's picking up or anything like that. So we've done the checks we can. Yeah, and we're just getting this back together. So I put some coolant in it, which is cool. Haven't put any gear oil in it yet. So yeah, there's still a fair bit to do. I haven't got any drive shafts in, headlights and stuff like that. Time's sort of getting on, but I'm kind of hoping to get it back together so I can program it today. But excuse me, if not, it will have to be another day, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm kind of keen to see whether this is all good. It's sort of one of those hero or zero moments, or it's sort of hero or take it all out again and be hero next time. So yeah, at the moment I'm just getting this wiring snake. So that's the one that was just over the wing mirror, which is where I tend to keep it, just keep it off the ground really. That wiring snake, so that's hanging down there. So yeah, it's got to be plugged into various places and there and up there and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to do that. And not that many stages actually to get it back together. Gear oil, obviously all that scuttle panel's got to go back together, and then get out the pass-through device so to do the programming. So the way we're going to do it, I've borrowed a device. So in the dealer, obviously they would have their Renault laptop with the Renault software installed on it. We obviously don't have that, so how are we going to program this brand new unit? So what I've got is what's called a pass-through device. So you connect it to the diagnostic port, and then you connect it to the Ethernet port on your router, and you use like a support company, and you tell them what you want doing. So you say, I've put on a brand new motor controller and I want it programming, blah blah blah. You put in the VIN and everything, you give them all the information, so you tell them what you want programming into it, which is great. And basically they use the original software, but they kind of are communicating with the car via that pass-through device. So they're sitting in their office somewhere, but it's like they're sitting at the car. As long as you've got a decent internet connection, obviously if anything drops out midway, major game over. But yeah, no, it's been done with this kit before, so should be all good basically. So yeah, that's going to be a job for in a bit once I've got this back together. So I'm going to keep cracking on, and yeah, see where we get to basically. So yeah, cool. All right, catch you in a bit. Okay, so the car is pretty much back together, basically minus the sort of scuttle panel, which is not crucial, and the wipers, just because I'm a little bit pressed for time to get the programming done today. So I need to get the car moved. All the kind of important stuff is back in place. I need to push the car around so that it's within range of basically my router to connect the pass-through device to do the programming. Yeah, I need to get some help to basically push it round. So yes, it's very rock and roll, but yeah, it's got to be done. So yeah, push that round and then see what happens. All right, cool. Okay, so the car is pretty much back together, just minus the scuttle. But yeah, just a little bit worried about the time cracking on, basically, to get this programming done today. So we've got the pass-through device connected to Ethernet, connected to the car, and then we've got the laptop, and you basically raise a ticket, tell them what you want, and they hook up and do it. It takes a little while. I've done this once before, and you have to let the car go to sleep afterwards. So it's probably going to take about an hour or so in total. But, fingers crossed, we will get it done. So I'm just going to chat to them. I'm going to concentrate. There's various things you have to do. So yeah, you can see the rather impressive 6,000 miles mileage, ridiculously low. But yeah, hopefully this will be fully functional shortly. We'll catch you in a bit. Okay, so I've left the car to go to sleep, which is what you have to do once you've done the programming. And now we can see what happens. So we left the motor on this one because it was really low mileage and it looked okay, but you can never be totally sure. So there's no warnings, which is good. Okay, no warnings when you start it. Now this is where we see what's occurring. Oh yes, it's alive. Fantastic. Okay, cool. Whoa, the brakes are a bit grindy. That's not a massive surprise. Okay, brilliant. Let's just go back around the other way. I've had to move loads of cars basically to get this one in the right position to get it programming, but it was obviously worth it. Fantastic. So this is alive. This is cool. I need to do some good test driving on this. It's not got a lot of charge. I think the next thing I'm going to do is plug it in and let it charge for a couple of hours and then take it for a whiz. It's not, I need to do the scuttle, don't I? And the wipers. Yeah, don't worry about that stuff on the drive. Okay, cool. Right, this is good. Good stuff. There you go, 6,000 miles. We can make that go up a bit. Right, I'm going to plug this in. That is cool. Yeah, it needs a proper test, this, because obviously this is good, but the proof of the pudding, you know, is doing a reasonable speed for a reasonable amount of time. But yeah, it's certainly an improvement, isn't it? Right, okay, cool. I'm happy with that. Good day's work. Right, I will catch you all later. All right, cheers.